Wow, these guys are eager. Okay, everyone, it's pretty darn close to 8:30, if not 8:30 p.m. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. My name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Ron. Welcome home, right? You guys are all familiar with our conference going on next week, December 9th. Start here at 9 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. It's called the December to Remember Spiritual Banquet Conference. Peter M's coming up from Florida. He'll do a few different segments. He'll actually be our night speaker. And we have a whole host. We have Jimmy A., we have Marion from Florida, we have Sarah I. This is going to be a really powerful, life-changing event. When you come to these things, it's all free. With a free lunch, we'll have an amazing amount of food. Of course, we could always use extra stuff if you'd like to bring it and donate it and add to like a potluck type of affair there. But we have plenty of different things that'll be all absolutely free. It's all donation supported through all your contributions and support through the years. Okay, with that, we'll bring up the world's best chairperson. Let's welcome Brian and see what he's got today.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. Brian. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday right here at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. That's 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, PA. The food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock, and the speaker comes on at 8:30. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7:30, so feel free to join us. Come early, enjoy the coffee and refreshments we put out. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. So if there's anyone that is new or that's visiting from out of town that would like to introduce themselves on a first-name basis so we can welcome you. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elias. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Elias. That's it, okay. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with a working knowledge of the 12 steps and who is willing to sponsor raise your hands? So there you go. If you are new or if you're struggling or if you've been coming around for a while, it's just not working for you, grab one of those people after the meeting. We'd love to talk with you, recommend some meetings, get you involved in things. Our sister group is a big book study. Oh, I forgot. Does anybody have any announcements from the floor for the good of AA? Nothing. Okay, a couple quick announcements for this group. Again, Ron mentioned the workshop we have going. We got the flyer up there on the wall. Feel free to snap a picture of it, share it with your friends, whoever you think might be interested in that. This meeting has a sister group, which is a big book study meeting. It meets right up the road here, Thursdays at 7:30 at Salem UCC Church on 186 East Court Street in Doylestown, PA. Again, the coffee's on for that meeting at 6:15, so feel free to show up early and join us. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books or CDs to those who can't afford them can put their donations in that jar on the back table, marked Big Book and CD donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, PA. We post the speakers that we have for this group. We also post speakers that we have a meeting in the room right next to here. That's Monday at 6 o'clock. That's a step discussion meeting. That meeting's also followed by an Al-Anon meeting at 7:30. There's also a meeting right on the other side of this wall in this church every morning, 6 a.m., right? 6 days a week, 6 a.m. So if you want any more information on that, again, see me, see a home group member after the meeting. We also have a Facebook page. You can follow us on Facebook. We post the speakers that we have, our upcoming scheduled speakers. We post events like this workshop we have going on. A lot of other groups will post anniversaries and things of the likes that they have going on. So it's a good resource to have to stay tied in with the happenings in the area with AA. And with that, I believe Jeff is going to come up here. He's going to read our Just for Today prayer.
Hi everybody, Jeff Alcoholic. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except for myself. We're going to have Mike come up to read the AA preamble.
I'm Mike. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome home. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And with that, we bring up Scott for the steps, I believe.
Hi, my name is Scott. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. 12 steps. 1. We admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to God, to the care of God as we understood Him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God and ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. 7. We humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had admitted we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except to do so would injure or hurt others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now Brian will come up and introduce our speaker.
Okay, we do have a 7th tradition. Every A group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we'll see that the basket makes its way around. Of course, there's no dues or fees for A membership, but we do have expenses, and your contributions help us to cover the cost of food, rent, big books, CDs, workshops, etc., so we do appreciate it. Absolutely no smoking on church property. As per usual, it's the church's policy. Just be considerate of that as you're coming and going from the meeting. Wait until you leave here. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group on loan to us from the PPG Webster Group of Rochester, New York. Please help me welcome Ryan.
Thank you very much, Brian. Hi, everybody. My name's Ryan Milne. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Ryan. And I am very glad to be here. Let me get something out of the way real quick. You guys had some dude, Jake, here last week that was talking. And he apparently thought it'd be funny to tell everybody to tell me that he's a better speaker no matter what happens. So, yeah, Jake's a good friend, and he is actually a better speaker no matter what happens. So, it's fine. But I have been catching those blows since I walked in the parking lot, just so everybody knows. I am so grateful for being here. Ron, thank you so much for asking me. I've been listening to these talks on your YouTube channel for a long time, and I'm just excited to be here. This is awesome. I feel the energy, I feel the enthusiasm of the group, and I really feed off that. I feed off that either way. Sometimes I go to meetings and man, everyone's like half asleep and dragging. Seems like they don't want to be there, and I feed off that energy. Then, I lose my enthusiasm. But so I love a group that's engaged and into it, and because that's my nature. I mean, I am enthusiastic about Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Excuse me. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love our program. I love our book. I love our meetings. I love alcoholics. I love drunk alcoholics, sober alcoholics. Spend my life with alcoholics. And yeah, I'm all in. I'm married to an alcoholic, a beautiful alcoholic, yeah. Sober. She will tell you longer than me, yes. What, 2.5, 3 years longer? I don't know. She knows the months, I'm sure. My sobriety date is November 13th, 2006, and my home group, as Brian said, is PPG Webster. We meet on Sunday mornings, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. We're on Zoom. Come talk to me after if you want those Zoom numbers. We are a line-by-line book study. I absolutely love it. I admit to everybody it is on the nerdy side. I mean, we really, really break down the book. And it's not for everybody, but by doing that, by studying the book in this, dissecting it in this way, what's happened is I've been able to learn and, more importantly, practice what our program tells us, the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, through doing that, I can more effectively carry its message to the suffering alcoholic. For years, I didn't really talk much about my drinking. I really would come up here and say a couple things just to qualify real quick, and then I would talk about recovery because I'm passionate about recovery. I want to talk about recovery, The last few years, I've been moved to talk more about alcoholism. It seems like an observation that I have is in our fellowship, one place we lack is really explaining and discussing the disease, the illness of alcoholism. And I think it's very, very important that we understand the problem. Thank God for Silkworth. Silkworth, thank God he explained to Bill Wilson what was wrong with him. Without really understanding the problem, it's cool we got a plan of action, and it's cool we have a spiritual solution. But without really understanding the problem, it's like it's like in any scenario. If I'm sick, if I have an illness, I go to the doctor, right? The doctor's going to push and prod and ask me some questions and, whatever else. The doctor's going to diagnose what's wrong with me. I don't feel better yet, but now I understand the problem. I understand what's wrong with me. Now he's going to give me a plan of action. He's going to send me to the pharmacy. He's going to tell me go home and get some rest and drink lots of water, whatever it is. So now I understand the problem and I have a plan of action. I still don't feel better yet, but at least we're on our way. I go to the pharmacy, I get the prescription filled, I go home, I start following it, taking the medicine, getting some sleep, drinking the water, whatever it is. Now I'm starting to feel better. We have all three components. And so, so forgive me, I guess, if I will speak in a general way about my drinking, but I do think it's important. And the longer I'm around, the more fascinated I really am with the mental aspect of alcoholism. I mean, to me, it really is fascinating. The physical component, I think that's a lot easier to get because we can quickly look at our experience and see, I know for me, once I start drinking, once I put alcohol into my body, I cannot control the amount I'm going to drink. And that started right from the very beginning, just about, I won't go back to childbirth here, but I will say briefly that, before somewhere, I don't know, I remember probably my whole life, but I remember really in middle school and early high school, I just had this feeling. I've heard it explained many different ways in Alcoholics Anonymous. The way I say it is I always felt like I was like a half step behind everybody else. It seemed to me all these other kids knew what they were doing. It seemed like they had an idea with what they were doing in life. And I didn't, so what I would basically do was I would just watch everybody and I would just copy what everybody else was doing. And I got really good at that. And that stayed like that. Then the first night I drank, man, we all pulled in money and we took a car up to the hood and we bought 40s of Old English, 800, this is in the 90s. And, we come back to the woods. I'm in the suburbs here. We come back to the woods and we had a bonfire and we start drinking, okay? Somewhere in the middle of that first 40 ounce, something profound happened to me. Absolutely profound. I didn't really realize it at the time. It just seemed like I was having a good time, But in hindsight, looking back, and considering that experience and learning what I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't use the word lightly, but it was magic. I mean, it really, truly was magical, when I started drinking, or a little bit into drinking, I guess. And what it was it felt like I was having a good time, but what it really was, for the first time in my entire life, I felt absolutely equal to and connected to other people. And man, I loved it. And I loved the camaraderie that came with that, the excitement, yeah, I love you, man, all that kind of stuff. Like, I fed into that. Like, I absolutely love that stuff. And, drinking was real fun for a minute, and then it was what I did for a while, and then it got pretty pathetic at the end. But I will say, if drinking stayed just like it was back in 1990, whatever, I mean, I'd be in those same woods with a 40-ounce listening to Wu-Tang right now, just like I was back then. You know what I mean? Like, nothing would be changed at all. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't my story. So, also, what happens to me when I do put alcohol in my body, turns out, is different from approximately 90% of the population. They say something like 10% of the population is alcoholic. So, like, statistically, if 10 of us were around that bonfire that night, we're all drinking the same fine malt liquor, and I'm assuming everyone is reacting the same way I'm reacting. But that's not the case. The magic that I'm feeling statistically has only happened to me and not the other 9 guys standing around there. But I didn't know anything about an allergy to alcohol or a phenomenon of craving. We didn't talk like that. You know what I mean? Like, I was just having fun. I didn't want the party to stop. It was just a good time, pretty much. And, I can never figure out with these kids, like, it'd be like midnight or something, and they'd be like, I got to go home. I got practice in the morning. I got basketball. I got to work in the morning. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we are rocking and rolling. Let's go. You know what I mean? Like, that's what alcohol does for me. I mean, it gets me, it awakens my spirit. Truly, it awakens my spirit, and it gets me fired up. And that's not the case with everybody. I was in a band in the 90s, and the drummer, my friend Corey, so we'd get beers for band practice, right? And my friend Corey played drums, and I used to watch him drink, right? And he would drink a beer, very normally drink a beer, maybe even sometimes a second one. But he would, every time, at some point, if he did get that second one, he would push it away. He would set it down and forget about it. And I would watch him, and I'd be like, I could like see this change come over him, somewhere in that second drink, where like, it was like a physical change would come over him, and he didn't like that feeling. That's how his body was reacting to alcohol. He would push that away, and he would start to have this out of control feeling, he would tell me, and alcohol is a social lubricant, and it was comfortable for him, and he would shoot for that target, and he would hit his target, and he was good. He would call it off. His body told him, his mind told him, you're good, man, you did it, You had your drink and a half, and we're very comfortable, And me, somewhere around that same point, somewhere in that second drink or third drink, something totally opposite happens to me. It's fascinating, really. Something totally opposite happens to me. It's like my wiring is just total, let's go. It's on. What are we doing? We're rocking and rolling, And that's that physical kind of aspect to alcohol. And, a lot of that's from that craving for more alcohol, when I start drinking. Now, when I get to the third drink, I want the fourth one even more. And I want the fifth one even more than I wanted the fourth. And I need the sixth one more than the fifth. And so on and so on. And I pass through the well-known stages of a spree. And a lot of consequences come from that physical kind of component to, when I'm drinking alcohol. That's where the consequences come from. And I wanted those consequences. I got consequences pretty early, minor ones at first, and it started getting worse and worse, And, I had only been drinking a couple years, and I was like, I got to rein it in. I got to rein it in a little bit. I'm a little out of control. I need to rein it in, So I would tell myself, I would go out and I would call my numbers. Okay, I would like I would say tonight I would never say one, like that's stupid, but I would like, there was times when I'd like be like, no more than 4 drinks tonight. And in the beginning, in those early years, I was able to successfully do that. I could go out, have 3 or 4 drinks, and go home. The catch is this: while I was able to successfully do that, I was not happy. It was not enjoyable. I wasn't enjoying my drinking. It was just like this kind of, white knuckle drinking, I guess, is what it was, really, So then that would kind of get old after a while, and I would say, you know what, let's have fun, let's do it. Just drink how you want, And then there's no control at all, and I'm really enjoying myself. I'm off and running, And, more about how alcoholism starts off saying, it's the great obsession of every abnormal drinker that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking. At the same time, and I have never, ever, ever had that experience. I just never had that experience. Silkworth uses the term elusive, while the sensation is so elusive. That's the one word that describes my drinking. Elusive. It always seemed like, when I started drinking, it always seemed like I was almost exactly right there. It always seemed like the next drink was going to get me exactly where I wanted to be. It always seemed like the next drink. And I could just never truly get there, I say this, and I might be lying, I don't know, but I never remember a time, I'm going to say there was never a time, but I never really remember a time when I was out drinking, in the middle of a night of fun, partying, rocking and rolling, somebody comes up to me and says, Ryan, here's another beer. I never ever remember a time saying, no, I'm good right here. This is exactly it, right here. Like I was never able to hit that mark. It just never happened. It always seemed like it was going to be the next one that got me where I wanted to go. So I think, that physical part, we can identify with that pretty good. But what I really find fascinating is the kind of mental aspect of alcoholism. It's like, turns out I was way sicker than I thought I was. I thought that what I really wanted to be, on the bottom of page 20 there, it talks about 3 different types of drinkers: the moderate drinker, the hard drinker, and the real alcoholic. And I really thought I was, and really wanted to be, the hard drinker. The hard drinker looks just like the alcoholic, drinks the same as the alcoholic. But, stern warning of a doctor, change of environment, falling in love, warning, all that kind of stuff, the hard drinker can rein it in, stop, moderate, and call it up, And so that kind of stuff would happen to me. I would get in trouble, I would have consequences, and I would quit. I would say, that's it, you're done drinking. And I would be, till I wasn't. I was the best at quitting forever. I was always doing it, quitting forever. Forever was somewhere in between like 4 hours and 3 weeks, but I was constantly quitting. I was Mr. Quit Forever guy. I went through those firm resolutions. Man, I went through that. And to me, this is the most, what I like to talk about is what would happen in that 4 hours to 3 weeks. What would happen? I can see alcohol is ruining my life. I can see these consequences are real. The people in my life, relationships, my parents, family, all that stuff, everyone would tell me, you got to stop drinking, man. You got to stop drinking. It's ruining you, you'll feel better if you stop drinking. They would tell me this kind of stuff. And, it seemed to make sense. Every time I got in trouble, I had been drinking. So, it seemed to make sense. But I would stop drinking, and I did feel better, but not in the way that I thought I was going to feel better. I felt anger better. I felt uncomfortable better. I felt sobriety better. I felt, it was just an absolute nails on a chalkboard feeling. And, that's the real crux of it is I didn't really have, in some ways, I guess I had a drinking problem, but it wasn't really a drinking problem. My problem really was sobriety. That was the truth of it is I did not know how to live sober and be not even happy. Forget happy. I couldn't even be like comfortable, and it was so miserable for me. They say restless, irritable, and discontented. That's perfect. That's exactly right. Another way to say that, to modernize it a little bit, might be like anxiety, anger, and depression, okay? And, that's what I would feel when I would stop drinking. Anxious, depressed, angry, however you want to say it, I was miserable. So my mind would tell me all kinds of things. It would look a couple different ways. There was the one way, this didn't happen too often, but sometimes it would just be like, you know what, if this is what sobriety's like, if it's going to be like this, the heck with it. Might as well drink, life's too short. Why live like this? So I would do that a few times. But more often than not, it was some kind of wacky combination that I would try to tell myself would be my successful way to control and enjoy my drinking, And, countless vain attempts to do that. Oftentimes for me, I would say it's the liquor. No more liquor. It's the liquor. If that's what always gets you in trouble. Every time you drink liquor, stick with the beer. So I would try to drink beer, and I would make a mess of my life drinking beer, And, wine. I went through a big wine phase. That did not go well at all, I'll tell you. So anyways, I would always try to do these combinations, and I would add in outside issues and medications and therapy and outpatients and all this kind of stuff, And I just couldn't figure it out. So then, eventually I found myself going to AA meetings. I'm kind of skipping way ahead here, but I found myself going to AA meetings. And when I first came to AA meetings, I had a few different reactions. My first reaction was, when you stop drinking and when I stop drinking, we don't feel the same. Because I'm coming into the meetings, now, I got a hood up, I got headphones on, I'm staring at my feet, I'm sitting in as far back as I can, I'm staring at my feet. I was just full of fear, basically, And we didn't have phones then, but if we did, I would have been playing on it, I'm sure, And I just felt different from you guys. But when the meeting would start and you guys would start sharing about what happened to you, what happened, how you felt, what you went through with drinking and with not drinking. When you guys started talking about that stuff, I felt really bonded. I felt connected, and I was drawn to that. But there was some. I got pretty confused going to AA meetings, and I was going to a lot of AA meetings. And I would get 24 hours, and I drank. I'd get 30 days, and I drank. We used to joke. I had like a shoebox of these chips. You know what I'm saying? 24-hour chips and 30-day chips and a couple 60-day chips. And going to lots of meetings and hearing lots of things. I had this idea about AA where this is what I thought AA was. I don't know where I got this idea. This is what I thought AA was. I thought I would go to a meeting. I would hear something so inspirational, I wouldn't drink that day. And then I would go to a meeting the next day, and the same thing would happen. And I guess I just thought I would live the rest of my life doing that. Like, that was what I thought AA was. And I read, I'm in the meetings, they're reading how it works. They're reading the 12 steps. Like, I just could not logically compute how those 12 steps had anything to do with me staying stopped from drinking alcohol. I really didn't understand. It seemed like some good stuff. Like, it seemed cool. It was like, I would sit there and I'd be like, yeah, maybe someday I'll do that.Maybe I'll take guitar lessons. You know what I mean? It was like, maybe I'll go to a gym, like it was like one of those things. Like, someday if I feel a little better, like maybe I'll worry about that stuff. I just had it absolutely backwards, and I couldn't be told otherwise. Like, I'm sure there was lots of people in the AA meetings telling me, you should get a sponsor. You should work our 12-step program. You've decided to join a 12-step fellowship. You should work a 12-step program. I mean, I'm sure there was people saying that. I just wasn't hearing it. I just absolutely wasn't hearing it. And, I'll tell you my first step experience. I was just reading this the other night, man. Page 152. Page 152. He says, let me build it. Let me tell the story a little bit. And I'm not really a good storyteller, but this one I'll tell. So, like, I've been going to all these meetings, and I kept relapsing or whatever. But at this point, I had, 30 days or 45 days or something like that. And, people started knowing me at the meetings. I'm in Rochester, New York. It's a small town, we're a small city, and everyone knew me, And this one particular meeting I was at, it was a gratitude meeting. And, yeah, it was a gratitude meeting, and like everyone was going around saying all the things they're grateful for. And I knew it was a smaller meeting. I knew it was going to come to me. So I'm like sitting there in the meeting trying to come up with some stuff like, all right, I got to think of something to say that I'm grateful for. And I've got this big smile on, you know what I'm saying? I'm putting on this show that I'm okay. And I'm not, man. I'm hurting bad. But I didn't know how to tell you that. I didn't know what to do about that. I thought I was treating my alcoholism by coming to AA meetings. That's what I thought I was doing the deal, you know? And, it got to my turn and I said something like, oh, I'm so grateful I have a roof over my head and clothes on my back, or whatever I said, doesn't matter. But I remember coming back to the halfway house I was in, and my roommate had moved out. I had the room to myself, and I laid down in the bed and I locked the door, and I just broke down, man. I really, really started crying. I mean, I really just absolutely, I wanted to die. I mean, I wanted to die. 30, 40, 45 days sober, whatever I was, I just could not go on like this. It was like, I knew I couldn't drink. My life had become an absolute dumpster fire. Like, I just knew I couldn't drink. So there was no question about that. What I was starting to feel, though, in my heart, in my soul, was I also can not be sober, And I really, really felt trapped. On 152 here, it says, we know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. That was me at that meeting that day. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. And I'll tell you guys, man, it is a horrible place to be. That is true. True hopelessness, absolute true hopelessness. How bright it is before the dawn, I guess. But from that place, I was able to ask a guy to sponsor me, and seeing the kind of stuff that I see in our fellowship, I am so grateful this dude was a big book sponsor. I mean, like, looking back, like, man, this could have gone sideways real quick. You know what I'm saying? But this guy I asked happened to be a big book sponsor. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all, Actually, the reason I asked the guy to sponsor me is for two reasons. He had shared in the meeting his first 11 months sober, the neighborhood he lived at was real hood. And I was like, wow, if he could stay sober there, that's pretty good. And he also mentioned in the meeting that he had a passion for taking guys through the 12 steps, sponsoring guys. So I had a feeling if I asked this guy, he wasn't going to say no. That was really all that was to ask this guy. But he turns out he was a big book sponsor. And what he said to me was cool. He goes, listen, I got 5 other new guys right now, and that's a lot, but I don't want to turn you away. He says, what we're going to do, we'll come over to my kitchen table on Wednesday nights, and we'll do a book study. We'll kind of go through the book together, and then we'll just do the 5 steps individually. I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm just like, okay, fine, whatever, whatever you want, man. So I showed up that next Wednesday. He came and picked me up at the halfway house, actually. He had a car. I was drawn to that. He had a girlfriend, an apartment, and a car. He came and picked me up at the halfway house, brought me back, and it was just me and another guy. And the week after that, the other guy was gone too. And we got busy, we got into the work. And another thing about the fellowship and meetings and stuff, I was real intimidated with the God talk, okay? I wasn't raised religious at all. My parents chose to not bring me up religious. So I didn't know anything about God, and I was intimidated when I would hear you guys talk about God as the power and thank God for my sobriety, by the grace of God. I would hear all this God talk in some of the meetings. Some meetings didn't mention God at all, but some of the meetings were talking a lot about God. And I was intimidated by that, and I thought that was going to really handicap me. I thought it was going to hold me back with recovery because I didn't know anything about God. But maybe, the way it worked out, it may have ended up being an asset for me because I didn't have all these preconceived judgments about God or about organized religion or anything like that. I was just in pain. I was just hurting, and I was just willing to do something different. And, my sponsor made that real clear and real easy for me. And for the second step, he just basically asked me that question. He just said, Ryan, do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe there's a power greater than yourself? And I was able to pretty easily say yes to that. It was like, I couldn't keep living the way I was living. That was the bottom line. I couldn't keep living the way I was living. So I was like, yes, sure. and it seemed like this guy had something working in his life. Not only did he have a girl, a car, an apartment, he also genuinely seemed like comfortable in his own skin. This brother had 2 years at the time, 2.5 years at the time, which seemed amazing to me. You know what I mean? And he seemed to be pretty jovial, pretty comfortable and happy. And I looked up for that, and I wanted that. He had what I wanted. And when discussing the second step, when we went through We Agnostics, it talks about lack of power. That was our dilemma. And he pointed out, which is interesting, it doesn't say lack of God. It doesn't say lack of God was our dilemma. It's lack of power. And, I think we maybe misread that sometimes, or we skim over that sometimes, but there's a lot of drunk alcoholics that have God in their life and a belief in God, but they're blocked off. They're blocked off from that power that comes from God. And he broke that down for me, and it just seemed to make sense. And I needed some of that power. I could see that of myself, I was truly hopeless. I could see that. It was evident, So I needed a power greater than myself. Obviously, my power wasn't working, and I was willing to kind of accept that. And we got into the third step, and I don't remember how much time he spent hammering home 60 to 63. When I take guys through, which I love to do, I spend a lot of time on 60 to 63. From the 3 pertinent ideas right to that third step prayer. To me, I think that's the heart and soul of our program, man. And the third step, what's cool about the third step is it's 1,000 miles deep, really, On the surface, it's just this first requirement is you got to quit playing God. It's not working. And then this says we make a decision that God is now going to be the director. So I was able to do that. I'm okay, I could see where my life was a wreck. And, he says, this God that you don't know anything about is going to now be your director. Okay, that sounds good. Me running the show did not work, and continues to not work, by the way. By the time we get to the 11th step, it says we remind ourselves constantly we are no longer running the show. I think it says that constantly because I'm still, to this day, 17 years sober, constantly trying to run the show. That is my default, is trying to run the show, But we got into what I think is so brilliant about our program. I think a lot of things are brilliant about our program. What I really think is awesome, though, is what is it that makes me so anxious, angry, depressed, restless, irritable, discontented? Why is it that I feel that stuff so much when I'm not drinking? Well, it seems like our founders have kind of pinned down 3 major areas that are blocking me off. Anger, fear, and relationship conduct, sex conduct. And, they see these are the 3 things that are really blocking me off, so we get to go into the 4th step and inventory that stuff. And again, this stuff all, in my experience, all hinges on the first step. Without a real first step experience, without really, truly internalizing deep down that I really, of myself, I can't do this, and I'm really broken and I'm really hopeless. Without that admission, I'm not going to be willing to do the rest of the program, what the program is going to ask of me. And we see it all the time. Every guy I sponsor pretty much, for the most part, I'll hit them hard with all this, twofold illness, physical, mental. I'm hitting them hard with all that stuff. They'll yes me to death. Oh, yeah, that's me. Oh, yeah, that's me. You know what I mean? Do you concede to your innermost self that you're truly an alcoholic? Oh, yeah. That's the first step in recovery. And we keep it moving. But I don't know the truth. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. That's between them and their higher power and what's going on with them. And I think just saying yes to that stuff and the truth comes out, right? The truth comes out in the action. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the action. And they tell us that a whole bunch of times over and over and over. In the 5th step, I think I had this idea that it was just straight up confession. It was just the straight up confession. And, there is a confessional aspect to it, for sure. But, my first sponsor and other sponsors I've had, from that point have really been good at not just listening to my inventories, but actually able to, point out the weak spots, okay? Actually able to show you, hey, I see you wrote down you made some mistakes in this area, but what about this? Weren't you fearful over here also? Some stuff like that. And as the sponsor on the other side of the table, it is my absolute favorite. It's probably my favorite thing in all of Alcoholics Anonymous is to listen to a fifth step. I've had the honor and the privilege, and I don't say those words lightly, to do it many times. And I absolutely love it because, no matter what our circumstances, no matter what our consequences, no matter what our backgrounds, old, young, poor, rich, black, white, gay, straight, all these people that I've sponsored, all that stuff, when it all boils down, all these circumstances are different, right? But what it all boils down to, it's just, at least the experiences that I've had, it all boils down to just a couple things, just a handful of things that we all seem to have in common. This deep down feeling that we are the center of the universe, self-centered. This deep down feeling that you don't understand, my case is different. These little petty fears that I'm not good enough. These little petty fears that I'm not going to get your approval, that kind of stuff. And every time I get to do that with somebody, it is just a beautiful experience for me because I feel, once again, absolutely connected to you. And it's just, I love it. I talk forever on the fifth step. It's my favorite experience, just about, moving forward through the steps, I had some cool experiences with the, 6 and 7. I also say, my first sponsor, I know he tried his best to explain how important 6 and 7 were. I know he did, okay? But my brain saw one paragraph for 6 and one paragraph for 7, and I thought, Wilson just took his foot off the wheel for these ones, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like, in my mind, it was like, they weren't that big of a deal, and so I kind of, I didn't understand the depth and weight that those two steps really hold. And my second sponsor, that's almost all he talked about was steps in 6 and 7. So I was able to grow with that. And, I had some cool experiences with the men's, should I tell yeah, I'll tell one story. All right. So, I grew up with, my friend Todd, okay? Todd was my running buddy. I mean, my brother, you know what I'm saying? We were inseparable for years and years, for real, okay? We went across the country a bunch of times. We did all kinds of stuff together. And, when I got really, really sick, I ended up stealing from Todd. I ended up robbing him pretty much. And, it depends on your perspective, how much, it was a lot of money to me. It was like in between $4,000 and $5,000. So it depends on your perspective. It's a lot of money, thousands of dollars. And, I eventually moved to Florida to try to get clean. That went bad. And he eventually moved away and he moved to Arizona, right? So time goes by. I come back here. I'm sober. And, time's going on. I have a couple years, or I don't know what I had sober, but Todd lived in Arizona, and I didn't think much of him. You know what I mean? I was just like, I didn't give him much thought. But he gets married and has some kids and moves back to Rochester, New York. Now, we have friends in common, so I heard through the grapevine he moved back to Rochester. All of a sudden, I find myself, not only did he move back to Rochester, he moved back to the same suburb that I lived in, that we were from, Irondequoit. And I without really noticing it, I find myself years sober, a couple years sober anyways, I don't know, recent 5 years sober, I don't know, something like that. And I'm like in the supermarket looking over my shoulder, you know what I mean? And I'm not really scared of him beating me up, or I'm not really scared of, I don't know, I just didn't want to have this confrontation. I didn't want to have an interaction with him. I didn't want to cross paths with him. And I would find myself, I'm at Walgreens looking over my shoulder, I'm avoiding this dude, And my sponsor said, I think it's time you reach out. So what I had been doing, I forgot to mention this. What I had been doing is every week I had been taking $25 out of my paycheck and putting it in a separate account. And, that got up to $100. That got up to $500 or something. I think when it was at $500, I got a hold of his email and I emailed him, hey, I'd like to get together and have a talk or something like that. I don't know. And no response. So I kept doing it, $25 in the account, $25 in the account, and it got up to $1,000. And I sent another email, and it says, listen, man, I'm living a different life now. I'd really like to make this right. What happened with us, I'd really like to clean this stuff up. Would you be willing to meet with me? And no response. So I go to my sponsor and I said, listen, it says in the book, man, it's water under the bridge. You know what I'm saying? I made my attempt. I reached out. You know what I mean? He goes, well, why don't we see if we can try one more time? And he insisted that I email him again, and add in the line to the email, I owe you. So that got a response. That wrote back. And he says, all right, I'll meet you. Let's meet for breakfast. We met for breakfast at this diner. Now, this was a big deal to me, okay? I go to the bank. I take the $1,000 out of the bank. I got an envelope. I take the day off work. I'm all freaking nervous, man. I'm like just a bundle of nerves. There's a beach by our house, Lake Ontario, Durand Beach, and I'm like down at the beach. I'm praying. I'm talking to my sponsor on the phone. And I go and meet him. And we sat across the table and we had breakfast. And it was pretty awkward. But I said my piece. I did what the book told me. I made the amends, direct amends. And I said, listen, I don't know the exact amount I owe you. I know it's a lot of money. I've been saving up. And I gave him the envelope. And I said, here's some money. He said, thank you. Put it in his pocket. We exchanged phone numbers and shook hands. It was pretty cold, pretty chilly. But we shook hands and went our separate ways. So I was like, oh, thank God it's over. Thank God it's over. I did it. Don't you know, this dude calls me. So that was breakfast. This dude calls me at 3 in the afternoon. And he says, listen, man. He goes, you wouldn't have any way to know this. We're trying to buy a new house right now. We're trying to buy a better house. And we were about $1,000 short for the down payment. And he says, your money, it was just in time, man. It was just in time. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate that. Now, of course, I had no way to know that and no idea any of that was going to transpire, that was going to happen. But it was cool. Then a few months after that, we had this little reunion of our old friends, of our old crew. Everybody was back in Rochester, and we had this little reunion. And Todd was there, and he pulled me outside, and he hugged me, and he said he loved me, and everything was squashed, everything was cool. And that's been years now, and we're not BFFs necessarily, you know what I mean? But we text, we're in touch, we talk, you know what I mean? We're cool. He's got kids and they're in sports, and we got kids and we're busy, so it's not like our paths cross that much. But I had no idea the freedom that was going to come from that amends. I mean, I really had no idea, just able to go through, the supermarket and just not be looking over my shoulder, which I didn't even realize that I was doing. It was just such a powerful event. So, these steps 1 through 9, really what they do is get me ready for steps 10, 11, and 12, which I think are my instructions for every day for the rest of my life. We call them AA's relapse prevention plan, steps 10, 11, and 12. You go to treatment, they're going to send you off with a relapse prevention plan. They're going to tell you, here's your trigger list, avoid these triggers, and avoid people, places, and things, and don't get in a relationship. They got their relapse prevention plan, but I think AA has a relapse prevention plan because many times I've got to talk to people who had a year sober, 5 years sober, 10 years sober, and they go back out. Many times I always ask the same questions. How often were you calling your sponsor with a 10-step? What did your prayer meditation look like? Upon awakening, when you retire at night, how'd that stuff look? And how many new guys were you working with? Without fail, the answer is no, and none. I mean, and the guys that I'm drawn to, the people that I'm drawn to in Alcoholics Anonymous are the people that are really, really doing that 10th, 11th, and 12th step all day, every day, and living in this stuff. I went, I'm ashamed to say, but I went probably 12 years sober, basically working a first step and a 12 step. I always sponsor guys. My first sponsor drilled that home and just always drilled that home. So I was always carrying a message to new guys. But I went a good 10, 12 years without writing an inventory, and I really had kind of forgotten or didn't pay much attention to the rest of the program. And when the pandemic happened and we got on the computer, things really changed for me. I know that's not everybody's experience, and I know people are really against internet AA or whatever. I'm just sharing my experience up here. We were able to, well, first, Reese and I, we were just like going on our local little neighborhood AA meetings on Zoom, or whatever, and kind of sucked, it was just like, I don't know, it's kind of boring, whatever. But then we got the idea one night, we're like, yo, it's the internet, we can go anywhere, It sounds so obvious now, but at the time it was like... So we used to do that at night, we'd be like, just Google, or just, search, I don't know, San Francisco AA, and just hop on a meeting. Then the thought came to me, I'm a big speaker CD listener. I love listening to speaker talks. I listen to them all the time. I'm a truck driver, so I'm always listening to talks. I listen to one almost probably every day. And through these years of listening to all these talks of all these speakers, I kind of had this little, in my head, bucket list of groups that I wanted to visit throughout the country, So I'm like, yo, these groups are probably on the internet too right now because we're all on the internet, So we went and checked one of them out. We didn't like it, whatever. And then we checked out Primary Purpose Group Dallas, okay? And this was the beginning. Then I heard about Primary Purpose Group Austin, Texas. And these two groups it eventually led to a whole bunch of other ones. But these two groups literally just absolutely changed both Risa and my recovery. I had never heard people discussing the book the way these groups were breaking down this book. And the Austin meeting back then, when everything was online, 2020, they were getting 400, 500, 600 people every Tuesday night or Wednesday night or whenever it was. And I was just blown away. People from big book nerds like us, from all over the world, were getting on there, hammering home about this one sentence over and over. And I'm like, man. So what I was doing was, and I didn't really realize I was doing this, is I would sit down with a guy and we would read line by line from the title page all the way through. Okay, and I would have him highlight what I had highlighted, and I would have him write down the same notes in the margin that I had written down, and I was able to talk about that stuff really clearly. But there was so much of our program that I wasn't even paying any attention to. I was just so asleep to so much stuff that was in there. So by studying the book in this way, I was just really able to come to life. And we started a book study like this in Rochester. Well, it's online, but in Rochester, PBG Webster. And it's been cool. It's been an experience. It's like, we were all on the internet, and then we started getting some people from all over, and we started building these relationships with these people all over, And then it was time to open up. People were going back in person, and we were pretty conflicted about that. We're like, man, how are we going to have our meeting without so-and-so, without these people, without, you know what I mean? So we decided just to stay on the internet. And, now my recovery, guys I 10-step with, let me say it that way, guys I 10-step with is just really blown up, man. And I have lots of friends in Rochester, New York, AA, of course, that's where I'm from, and that's where I sponsor a lot of guys and all that stuff. But my support, my spiritual guys are all over, and it's so cool. My first call for a 10-step is always to my sponsor. He's very busy and often doesn't answer. No problem at all. I call Ryan in West Virginia, Eric in California, whatever it is. I'm calling in Texas, And I got people with that are knowledgeable about our program and are able to point out in me, hey, it looks like you're scared here, man. It looks like there's some resentment going on that you're not clear on, or I see some self-pity here, whatever it is. And I absolutely love that stuff, man. I'm all about it. And the biggest change, I never did a written nightly inventory until 2020. I started doing it, following the directions exactly from our 11-step, from the book, and it has changed my life, absolutely changed my life. The first time I sat down and did it, I remember I sat there and it took me 45 minutes. And I'm like, man, I ain't going to do this every night. This is crazy. I'm exhausted, first of all. I get up real early for work, and I was waiting till bedtime to do this. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this. Then someone pointed out to me, it says when we retire at night. I read that as when I go to bed at night. But when we retire, what does that really mean? Retire really means done working, when I'm done working for the day. So dinner's over, put the dishes away, TV goes on or whatever, I'm retiring for the night. I pull out my nightly inventory. And, the next night maybe took a half hour, and now I whip them out, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. And at the bottom of the sheet that I use, it's just the questions directly from the book, but at this bottom, it asks for corrective measures. And I take that as spiritual corrective measures. So it's often there's a few things that are often on there, more conscious contact, meditation, longer meditation or something like that, more AA phone calls, I write specific names of guys I maybe haven't heard of or haven't talked to in a little while. I'm big on the phone. I love talking to alcoholics on the phone. I talk to at least 3 a day. I try to talk to 6, but at least 3 alcoholics every day on the phone. Not just guys I sponsor, but other friends in AA. I love talking recovery, so I'm all about it. But anyways, in the morning, it says upon awakening, there's a line there, after I'm asking God to direct my thinking, it says we consider our plans for the day. I pull out my nightly inventory, and I actually take a picture of it, to be honest. I take a picture of it, and I pull out the picture in the morning, and it shows my corrective measures from the night before. And I consider that, I look at that as my plans for the day, my spiritual plans or goals for the day. And by doing that over and over and over, I've just been able to see tremendous growth. I mean, more conscious contact. I always said, and maybe it is, I don't know. I always said my sobriety is my most important thing in my life. And, today I think really conscious contact with God is really the most important thing in my life, truly. Because I think without that conscious contact with God, I will eventually unravel. I will get sick again. I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, but I'm not special. It doesn't mean if I lit up on these spiritual disciplines, I get sick again. And we see it happen all the time. Guys with lots of time, get sick again. And, I don't know. I don't want that to happen. So, and the 12th step is really where my passion is. Absolutely. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. And for years, if you would have asked me, what does that mean? Carry what message? I would have given you some, half-baked answer, 12 steps or something like that. But it says it right there. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. That's the message I'm trying to carry. And hopefully, every time I share, every time I speak in a meeting, every time I talk on the phone, hopefully that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give hope. I'm trying to give hope that we can recover from this thing. We don't have to stay sick. We can recover from this hopeless state of mind and body. That doesn't mean I'm cured. That doesn't mean I don't have alcoholism anymore. I certainly do. If I go out and drink tonight, I'm in trouble, and everyone around me is in trouble pretty much. But I have recovered from that hopeless place. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not thinking about drinking anymore. I'm placed in a position that I'm safe, and God has made that possible. God and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous have made that possible. And that's why, I can sit up here and tell you how grateful I am for AA, and I am, but really it's indescribable. It's really, there's not words that can describe the true gratitude that I feel in my soul, in my heart for Alcoholics Anonymous. It is beyond words. Genuinely, I mean that. So that's all I got for tonight. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Love you all.
Okay, incredible stuff. Again, my name's Brian. I'm still an alcoholic. First and foremost, I want to thank Ryan for coming out here tonight, delivering an incredible message of hope and recovery with our group. A couple quick announcements, and we'll wrap it up here. Again, the Food and the Fellowship with this group starts every week at 8 o'clock. Feel free to show up early and join us. If you want to get involved with some service with this group, there's always a lot of moving parts. We have service positions available. Feel free to come early, join us, or just hang out and enjoy the refreshments that we put out. This group also does have commitments in hospitals and institutions in the area. So if you're interested in doing something like that, carrying a message to the sick and suffering, being on the front lines there, we have one in Quakertown tomorrow night. You can see me, see any home group member after the meeting. There's always the meeting after the meeting. So again, if you're new, you're just getting around here, hang out with us after the meeting. If you do want to help out with some service work right after the meeting, we could always use help putting the chairs away. We put away these chairs in the front. and along the sides here, and those ones on the table stay right where they are. It's customary for us to thank our speakers as they come here on their own time and expense. Usually we'll form a line in the front here and we'll thank our speakers. And thanks to everybody for helping out with the meeting night. Thanks to those who helped set up. Thanks to our greeters, our readers, and most importantly, let's thank our speaker one more time. And if you do care to join us, we have a nice way of closing. And, we'll close the meeting down here with a brief moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic inside and outside of these rooms, followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
Lord of heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back, wherever you work.
Can I test it out? But you got to get close to the microphone.
just hit stop, right?
Just stop.